At 7:42 in the morning on June 12, 2015, security footage from the Canyon Village Ranger Station, Yellowstone National Park, captures photographer Eli Turner signing the South Rim Trail Register. The timestamp matches a credit card receipt, coffee, granola, topo map, logged at the general store precisely 2 minutes earlier. He adjusts the strap of his Nikon F2, squints toward the sulfur mist over the canyon rim, and taps his GPS handheld until its signal stabilizes. Behind him, tourists drift toward the overlooks, unaware this will be the last verified image of him alive for nearly a decade. The air hums with morning insects, radios crackle from a maintenance truck, and the register ink dries, one name among many. By 800 hours, the system records the entry as standard recreational activity. 72 hours later, that same signature will classify under a different heading, missing subject file number Yellow-26-15. By mid-morning on June 12, 2015, the weather over the canyon area measured 48 degrees Fahrenheit with variable wind and high visibility. Witness Allison Pike, a tourist from Oregon, later recalled a man alone, carrying more camera gear than seemed practical. Her statement, recorded on June 16th, would form Attachment B1 in the initial SAR, search and rescue file. Turner had departed Jackson 2 days prior, after emailing his sister, Dr. Rachel Turner, plan: shoot Canyon Light, back Saturday. The tone was casual, routine. He'd completed wilderness orientation at Bridge Bay Visitor Center, a 6-minute briefing on trail safety and weather protocol, recorded and timestamped at 1000 hours on June 10th. The canyon area trails are among the park's most visited, bordered by lodgepole pine, crumbly rhyolite soil, and narrow switchbacks tracing the Yellowstone River Gorge. His choice of location raised no initial concern. Subject seen alone south rim. Last contact 8:01 a.m. No distress reported. Over. That entry, ordinary clerical notation from Ranger Diane Holloway, would later anchor investigators trying to reverse engineer 45 square miles of wilderness from a name in a logbook. Every disappearance begins as a moment no one registers as important. 48 hours later, her radio note, no distress reported, would read differently. In the days before his trip, Turner's behavior offered no anomaly. Bank records show purchases consistent with prior expeditions, dehydrated meals, battery packs, film rolls, and a new SD card dated June 9th, 2015, from a Bozeman outdoor supply store. Local clerk testimony, Brent Holloway, age 27, described Turner's quiet thoroughness, recalling him checking compass calibration against a store clock. He said he liked things exact, the clerk noted. That precision would later haunt rescue analysts, contrasting GPS data discrepancies. Park accommodation logs confirm a 2-night booking at Canyon Campground Site E13. Ranger L. Martinez recorded vehicle inspection at check-in. No irregularities, empty back seat, one food canister compliant with bear safety regulations. Inventory photo B3 captured his Nikon camera with a partial lens cap. Scuff matched serial number confirmed via manufacturer database July 1st, 2015. Standard trip, standard kit, no deviance. Yet the absence that followed would expose procedural stress test limits of even the park's seasoned search framework. 26 major searches had been conducted in Yellowstone that season. 24 subjects located within 48 hours. Turner's case would prove different. His field preparation seemed methodical. Weather Service printouts recovered from his vehicle showed 3-day forecasts. Trail maps bore pencil notations of photo opportunities. A small journal contained light readings from previous Yellowstone visits, f-stops and shutter speeds for optimal canyon exposure. He wasn't careless, his sister would later testify during a congressional hearing on wilderness search protocols. Eli treated wilderness with respect. He logged everything. That documented precision created its own investigative tension. Experienced outdoor photographers don't simply vanish from heavily trafficked trails. At 6:30 that morning, security cameras at the Canyon Lodge coffee shop captured Turner purchasing breakfast. The barista remembered nothing unusual. Just another photographer heading out early. His credit card receipt showed a $16 purchase: coffee, granola bar, trail mix. Preparation creates false security. Yet each methodical step he took beforehand would become proof that nothing should have gone wrong. It would take 8 days before nothing acquired coordinates. On June 14th, Dr. Rachel Turner left 2 voicemails after her brother missed a scheduled satellite message. His routine: brief GPS check-ins via handheld spot device, short pings visible on a shared online map. None appeared after June 12th, 13:30 hours. By 2100 hours, she contacted Park Dispatch. The operator logged case initiation marker YNP 15-26, category overdue hiker. Protocol dictated a 24-hour buffer before field activation unless distress signals or environmental threats escalated. That evening, temperature dropped below 40. Wind readings peaked at 15 miles per hour. A light rain passed over the eastern canyon, leaving trail conditions slick but navigable. Caller reports missed check-in. Device ID matches prior registered SAR participant. Recommend alert prep overnight. This terse notation by dispatch officer Carla Reinhold would later be scrutinized for its procedural implications. Alert prep initiated passive monitoring rather than active search, a standard distinction for experienced hikers without signs of distress. At sunrise, June 15th, 2 Rangers and a contract SR volunteer initiated Grid Sweep Alpha, referencing Turner's intended route, South Rim Overlook Loop to Artist Point. Estimated 4 hours duration. Visual search yielded nothing. Trail register still showed 22 signatures after Turner's, none noting obstruction or distress indicators. The park's communication log recorded 8 radio exchanges that morning. Visibility good. No sign of subject along primary route. Routine language that belied growing concern. By afternoon, Dr. Turner arrived at Canyon Village, having driven overnight from her research position at University of Colorado Boulder. Her presence accelerated protocol, family verification of equipment lists, cross-check of recent communications, and expanded field parameter authorization. I knew something was wrong immediately, she later stated for the case file. The rangers kept talking about the trail being safe, populated, but that made it worse. How does someone disappear with dozens of tourists around? Standard protocol faced an inverse problem. Wilderness safety systems were designed for remote backcountry incidents, not disappearances from high visibility corridors. Absence accumulates quietly. On a busy day, over 800 hikers might use the South Rim Trail. Each passing hour diluted the probability of incidental witness sightings. National Park Service statistics registered 237 search operations in the greater Yellowstone ecosystem between 2010 and 2015. 93% resolved within 72 hours. 6% extended to 1 week. 1% remained open beyond a month. Eli Turner's case would enter that final percentage. At 1500 hours, Ranger Martinez radioed from the Eastern Rim section. Nothing yet. GPS dead zone just east of the ridge. Her observation referred to a documented signal interruption corridor, a topographical feature that would later gained significance. The wilderness never announces when routine becomes recordable anomaly. By June 16th, full search activation commenced under Incident Commander Lieutenant Harold Whitcomb. 26 personnel, 4 canine units, and 1 helicopter from Grand Teton Air Ops were deployed over a 48-hour cycle. Thermal imaging at night showed transient heat signatures near the rim forest, later confirmed as elk. Turner's parked vehicle, a white Subaru Forester, remained untouched at the canyon campground lot, windshield dust showing no disturbance since June 12th. Vehicle stationary, no forced entry. Inside, camera filters, half-consumed snack bar, folded jacket. No signs of struggle. This assessment by Ranger First Class Jerome Wilkins initiated formal evidence processing. The vehicle's condition suggested planned departure rather than hasty exit. Keys absent, doors locked, personal items arranged. Family arrival on June 17th initiated media notification. Flyer circulation began region-wide. Local newspapers ran modest articles under missing hiker headers. The Bozeman Daily Chronicle quoted Lieutenant Whitcomb. "We're treating this as a priority search operation with all available resources." One early false lead cited a hiker's footprint near Washburn Trail, size 12. Forensics found the imprint inconsistent with Turner's known 8.5 boot size. The Yellowstone Operations Center maintained 24-hour rotation, radio frequency dedicated to search coordination. Topographic maps covered bulletin boards, color-coded pins marking completed grid sections. Dr. Turner maintained constant presence, sleeping on a cot near the dispatch desk. "The professionalism was impeccable," she later wrote in a victim advocacy publication. "But I could tell from their faces something wasn't fitting their models." What didn't fit was statistical probability. South Rim Trail averaged 164 hikers daily in June. Undetected injury should produce witness reports. Voluntary departure should leave evidence patterns. Environmental factors, wildlife, weather, terrain hazards, all registered below critical thresholds that week. Emotionally, the investigation remained procedural, yet volunteers later described a distinct unease, a sense of surveillance within the dense subalpine woods, radios crackling at random intervals. Senior tracker Marissa Orilos noted in her field log, "Something about the eastern gully feels watched. Dog behavior erratic near steam vents." According to official records, 29% of SAR cases, later classified as criminal activity, initially present as routine lost hiker scenarios. The Turner case had not yet shifted categories. 4 days into the search, Lieutenant Whitcomb initiated probability mapping, a statistical overlay of survival likelihood based on environmental conditions, subject profile, and time elapsed. The model generated 7 high-priority zones. Each would be systematically swept through day 5. One disturbing element emerged in the meteorological record. Overnight temperatures dropped to 37 degrees on June 13th, cold enough to accelerate hypothermia in an injured subject. Yet thermal imaging had shown no corresponding heat signature. Searches designed for accident recovery falter when the landscape begins feeling watched. At dusk, helicopter footage caught a faint reflective glint 2 miles east, later marked Point Kappa. The coordinate would define the next act. On June 18, 2015, helicopter call sign Ranger 78 performed its 4th pass above the east rim. The glint first logged as anomalous reflection was located by grid reference corresponding to Point Kappa, a basalt outcrop overlooking Hayden Valley. A 3-person recon team rappel descended the slope early afternoon. Under branch cover, they located a metallic object partially buried. Turner's Nikon lens hood, serial number matching purchase receipt from Bozeman. Found lens hood, minimal soil disturbance, no blood patterns. Item photographed, bagged 1344. Field technician Sandra Reeves documented the recovery with methodical precision. The lens hood, a standard Nikon HB23 model, showed minimal environmental exposure. No precipitation damage despite 5 days outdoors. Nearby earth compression suggested partial kneeling posture. No slide marks, debris, or scavenger evidence. The position indicated deliberate placement rather than accidental loss. Helicopter audio on playback captured ambient static fluctuations. Technician later wrote, "Signal hum rose abruptly approaching the find area, cut to silence." The anomaly was attributed to geothermal interference, a phenomenon documented near several Yellowstone thermal zones. Visually, sunlight shimmered through steam vents across the canyon, a bright, indifferent wilderness. Ground temperature registered 8 degrees higher than ambient surroundings due to subsurface activity. The discovery transformed search dynamics. Point Kappa lay 1.8 miles from Turner's intended route, an unlikely deviation for a photographer familiar with the area. No established trail connected the locations. Item recovery indicates subject movement eastward beyond primary search zone, Lieutenant Whitcomb noted in his situation report, expanding grid parameters accordingly. Environmental assessment ruled out involuntary movement, no water flow patterns, animal drag marks, or terrain features that would transport an object that distance. The lens hood had been carried there. That evening, Dr. Turner reviewed her brother's equipment list. The Nikon hood was attached to his 70-200 zoom, his most valued lens. He wouldn't separate them accidentally. Forensic technicians detected partial fingerprint patterns consistent with Turner's right index finger. Deposition patterns suggested the hood was removed with deliberate care, not torn off during a fall. Even evidence here seemed half erased by geothermal breath. Steam vents near the recovery site maintained constant humidity, conditions known to accelerate evidence degradation. The search expanded to include 40 additional personnel through mutual aid agreements with adjacent counties. Airborne operations utilized FLIR, forward-looking infrared technology, to penetrate dense canopy. Local media coverage intensified. The Jackson Hole News and Guide ran a front-page feature titled "Photographer Missing in Yellowstone Mystery." It included background on Turner's professional work, wildlife photography, sold to National Geographic, Outside Magazine, and regional publications. What remained unmentioned: Point Kappa overlapped with a maintenance access corridor dating to 1978, a trail unmarked on public maps, but documented in park infrastructure archives. The coincidence would not be noted until much later. Investigators circled the map point twice. None registered the secondary sign, bent willow branch 10 meters upslope. Later analysis would determine the break pattern was consistent with human passage, not wildlife. Night fell over the search zone, operations suspended until dawn. Temperature dropped to 42 degrees with light winds from the northwest. Radio chatter faded. In the darkness, only the occasional click of cooling metal equipment broke the silence. By June 19th, 27 additional SAR personnel were summoned under extended radius classification. Operations established Base Camp Bravo, elevation 7,400 feet. Temperature recorded 41 degrees at pre-dawn briefing. Rangers rotated in 6-hour sectors. Foot patrol, canine, and drone overflight. Aerial thermography again produced faint heat traces that dissolved when approached. Target echo At grid Alpha 6, responding team reports negative visual. This radio transmission from sector leader Teresa Hammond underscored a recurring pattern: sensor anomalies that failed to materialize into physical evidence. Psychological rotation began to show tension. Log entries noted fatigue and ambient unease. Volunteer Aaron Paulson: the radios felt alive, like they were listening back. Her observation, initially dismissed as sleep deprivation, would later correlate with documented equipment malfunctions. 3 separate communications devices registered power drainage exceeding normal rates when operated near Point Kappa. The wilderness surface had turned procedural: clipboards, call signs, fluorescent markers in mist. Human activity momentarily transformed the landscape into a coordinate system, a mathematically divisible space. Area Kappa complete. Recommend shift northern drainage tomorrow. This clinical notation masked growing frustration. 7 days of search had yielded a single physical item. No footprints, no clothing fibers, no further camera equipment. Dr. Rachel Turner maintained tent-side vigil, watching teams depart each dawn, present yet voiceless within operational hierarchy. Grief transcribed into waiting protocol: observe, endure, call again. National Park Service regulations dictate search operations maintain 96 hours of continuous coverage before mandatory reassessment. The Turner case had exceeded that threshold. Continuation required explicit authorization from the regional director's office. That authorization arrived via secure email at 1700 hours, granting a 72-hour extension based on physical evidence recovery and exceptional circumstances. The message referenced comparative case patterns, instances where missing persons were located alive after extended periods when professional equipment was involved. Physical search methodology expanded to include subsurface assessment. Ground-penetrating radar units, typically used for archaeological surveys, were deployed to examine soil anomalies. Canine teams worked double shifts despite handler concerns about scent. Degradation. Belgian Malinois K9 officer ranger tracked intermittent trail fragments to a geothermal vent field before losing continuity. Handler Ryan Mitchell later testified, "She behaved differently on this search, alert but hesitant. In 8 years of wilderness recovery, I've never seen her refuse to advance on a scent trail." Search work breeds a strange intimacy with despair. Repetition becomes its own language. Each team returned with identical non-findings, methodically documented, cross-referenced, archived into the growing case file. Statistical probability graphs displayed on operations center monitors showed survival likelihood curves dropping below 20%. These were not shown to family members. At sunset, drone camera L3 captured ground pattern resembling letters, later confirmed as natural erosion caused by melting snowpack. For 16 minutes, however, the operations center experienced a surge of cautious hope. That's how pattern recognition works in extended search protocols, the human mind grasping for meaning in randomness. The night shift, deployed with additional thermal equipment. Cloud cover thickened, ambient temperature holding at 39 degrees. Radio transmissions reduced to scheduled check-ins, each one confirming the same status: no contact, no evidence, continuation of search pattern. On June 21st, 9 days after last confirmed sighting, weather interfered. Cold rain drenched equipment. Searchers described footing like soap over shale. Communications lag forced analog relay through repeater tower on Mount Washburn. At 15:53, operator Howard Tien logged an unverified channel intrusion. Found him. Do not come down. Voice faint, male, not matching any registered frequency. Audio verification later ruled inconclusive. likely cross-band interference. Yet atmospheric phenomenon or not, morale fractured that night. No further transmission. Searchers reported localized echo despite distance. This notation in the communication log would later be compared against meteorological conditions. No thunderstorm activity, no documented atmospheric anomalies that would explain signal bounce. Command did not publicize the intercept to family or media. In Base Camp Bravo, Rangers huddled under tarp shelters. Rain percussed against nylon fabric. Dampness infiltrated equipment, clothing, morale. Search efficacy decreases 17% in precipitation, according to National Park Service training manuals. Yet the operation continued. Grid patterns adjusted for limited visibility. A psychologist attached to the Park Service, Dr. Lavina Hart, observed cumulative stress among participants, delayed sleep, auditory patterning, mild group derealization. Her report would enter the archive as Annex H2, cognitive strain in extended field ops. She noted, extended wilderness searches create their own psychological ecosystem. Silence becomes oppressive. Small sounds acquire outsized significance. Her observation proved prescient when 3 searchers independently reported mechanical clicking sounds from unidentified directions. Audio recording devices captured only rain impact and distant geothermal venting. Environmental variables accumulated into procedural friction. Mud obscured potential evidence. Radio batteries depleted faster in cold conditions. Visual distance reduced to less than 100 yards through mist and rain. Dr. Turner remained at Command Center reviewing her brother's recovered journal entries from previous trips. One passage, dated April 2014, mentioned strange tunnel formations east of Artist Point. Looks like old maintenance access? Worth exploring next trip. This seemingly mundane observation would later correlate with subsurface features near Point Kappa, but connection remained unmade during active search phase. We're approaching statistical terminus, Lequitier Whitcomb informed the family that evening. The clinical phrasing masked a difficult reality. Search resources were finite. Probability curves couldn't justify indefinite deployment. The line between environment and perception blurs quickest when silence becomes constant data. At 2300 hours, all teams reported negative contact. The rain continued through midnight, temperature holding at 37 degrees. Most searchers retreated to sleeping bags, rotation reduced to minimal overnight monitoring. Midnight patrol located new boot print, not Turner's, but worn military tread size 10, partial impression in mud near north perimeter of search zone. The discovery sparked brief activation of additional personnel, but rain soon erased the fragile evidence. Print documented via photograph only. No casting possible due to degradation. This entry marked another investigative frustration. Glimpses of potential evidence that environmental conditions refused to preserve. Statistics showed 77% of missing persons located within 1.5 miles of their last known position. Turner's lens hood had been found at 1.8 miles. Every tenth of a mile beyond statistical norms exponentially decreased recovery probability. Lequitier Whitcomb updated operations maps, expanding the secondary search radius to 3 miles. Far beyond standard protocol. The decision stretched resources thinner, but acknowledged the anomalous nature of the case. Between June 22nd and June 30th, the mission persisted with reducing probabilities. 90 flight hours logged, 74 ground sweeps completed. Budget evaluation approached administrative threshold. At 1300 hours on June 30th, Lieutenant Whitcomb consulted the Turner family, outlining official suspension parameters. Protocol required one final verification. Cross-reference missing subject's last data ping with park maintenance schedule. This minor administrative check unearthed anomaly. GPS echo signal from Turner's. Handheld, activated once after silence. Time-stamped June 18th, 3 kilometers south of Point Kappa. Signal registered 16.3 seconds duration. Insufficient for triangulation fix. Communications specialist Felix Alvarez documented the finding with professional restraint. Yet the implications disturbed the investigative framework. The signal occurred 6 days after Turner's disappearance, well beyond standard survival parameters without shelter. Signal corridor, inaccessible due to unstable geyser terrain. Attempt postponed by Geothermal Safety Division. The area designated Hazard Zone Bravo contained unpredictable thermal vents with ground temperatures exceeding 200 degrees Fahrenheit. Media coverage faded by early July. Local newspapers reduced updates to small paragraphs on inside pages. National attention never materialized. That season, 3 other wilderness disappearances in western states competed for limited public concern. Volunteers departed. The forest resumed summer silence. Dr. Turner returned to Colorado but maintained weekly contact with park authorities. Her academic position granted sabbatical leave, time spent coordinating with private search consultants and reviewing case documentation. On July 5th, Ranger Bradley Ortiz submitted comprehensive closure recommendation. His 16-page assessment concluded, without further evidence, probability of survival after this duration is negligible. The document analyzed weather exposure, wildlife interaction probability, terrain hazards, and statistical outcomes from comparable cases. Official case suspension occurred July 7th. Administrative classification changed from active search to long-term missing person. This transition shifted responsibility from field operations to investigative division, a procedural handoff that often marked the effective end of physical search efforts. Turner's personal effects, those recovered from vehicle and campsite, were cataloged, photographed, and released to family. His Subaru remained in park impound for additional forensic processing, though no criminality indicators had been identified. Ranger Martinez, who had checked Turner's campsite compliance on arrival, requested reassignment from Canyon District. Her personnel file noted personal distress regarding unresolved disappearance. She would later become an advocate for expanded GPS tracking systems in national parks. One notation in the final field report remained unevaluated. Thermal imaging from June 23rd had captured an anomalous heat signature beneath a rock shelf, potentially indicative of temporary shelter. The coordinate received only cursory ground inspection due to difficult terrain access. Bureaucratic finality is written not in timestamps, not in mourning. The Turner case officially transitioned to cold case status on September 1st, 2015. File boxes were transferred to archival storage at park headquarters. 1. Ranger maintained unofficial interest. Seasonal employee Marcus Leung had participated in 6 of the ground sweeps. During off-duty hours, he continued exploring the Eastern Canyon region, developing an alternative theory involving unmapped thermal caverns. His field notes never entered official record. 5 years later, on an unrelated ecological survey, that same coordinate would light up again. On September 9th, 2020, 5 years and 89 days after closure, Field Team USGS Hydrothermal Survey Unit registered unusual seismic resonance near pre-collapsed vent A17, 2.9 kilometers south of prior Point Kappa coordinates. Technician Marco Ruiz approached on foot to recalibrate vibration meters. At 10:46 a.m., He found remnants of camp gear protruding from silica crust. The equipment bore corrosion consistent with geothermal exposure, melted plastic, oxidized metal frames. Within the residue, a waterproof case, brand Pelican, remained intact. Inside, camera body, undeveloped film, and a warped GPS unit belonging to Eli Turner. Recovered assets correlate serial data. Evidence chain established on site. Photographic negatives protected for lab transfer. This clinical notation by lead scientist Dr. Vanessa Okoye masked the emotional impact of the discovery. 5 years of administrative closure suddenly reversed. A missing person case abruptly reactivated. All items transferred to Yellowstone Law Enforcement Section under property tag YNPTW520. Chain of custody documentation required 16 signatures. Procedural thoroughness reflecting the case's renewed significance. Initial forensic scanning revealed the GPS device powered once on June 18, 2015. Identical timestamp to anomalous echo reading long dismissed. The correlation validated the earlier signal detection and established Turner's presence in an area previously deemed inaccessible. Park Superintendent Charles Winston personally contacted Dr. Rachel Turner. According to interview transcripts, his opening statement acknowledged institutional failure. We need to revisit assumptions made during the original search. Within 48 hours, an interagency team assembled at Canyon Village Operations Center. The room, unchanged since 2015, displayed the original search maps, now overlaid with new topographic data from USGS survey. The silica crust indicates recent geological activity, probably within 18 to 24 months, geologist Teresa Hammond explained during the initial briefing. The equipment may have been subsurface until thermal expansion forced upheaval. This theory explained the preservation of certain items, despite 5 years' exposure. The camera's waterproof case had maintained integrity despite extreme conditions. FBI evidence technician Aaron Brookstone supervised preliminary examination. The GPS unit shows signs of attempted activation, multiple battery depletion cycles, suggesting deliberate effort to signal. This finding challenged previous narrative of accidental wilderness death. The GPS activation pattern indicated conscious survival effort, extending days beyond initial disappearance. Records, once routine, became prophecy in hindsight. Each ignored data blip, a held breath of truth. The original search team had detected the activation but dismissed its reliability due to signal weakness. Media interest rekindled, though tempered by COVID-19 restrictions. Virtual press conferences replaced on-scene reporting. The Billings Gazette headline read, "Yellowstone Cold Case Reopens After Shocking Discovery." Dr. Turner arrived September 12th, escorted through pandemic-restricted park entrance. Her presence authorized under exception protocols for next of kin in active investigations. "I never stopped looking," she told investigators. "Every summer since 2016, I've walked those trails." Her personal search efforts, undocumented in official records, had included hiring private wilderness experts and consulting with search theorists. None had explored the specific thermal zone where evidence ultimately surfaced. Film development would show a final sequence no searcher could explain. Developed under controlled conditions at Billings Forensic Imaging Lab, 31 frames survived partial heat degradation. 28 displayed ordinary landscapes, sulfur pools, fallen lodgepole pine, midday light haze. The final 3 differed. Frame 29 depicted a blurred human figure too close to lens, light flicker overwhelming the edges. Frame 30, partial earth view, boot tread pattern distinct from Turner's. Frame 31, indeterminate, overlay of streaks, possibly motion during exposure, possibly veiling with steam. evidence of secondary human presence confirmed by frame sequence analysis. This assessment by FBI photography specialist Kendra Williams marked a categorical shift from wilderness accident to potential criminal investigation. The unidentified boot print now correlated with photographic evidence. Analysts debated authenticity versus accidental light leakage. Technician report neutral. Cannot confirm deliberate subject capture. The degraded film quality introduced ambiguity. Potentially critical details lost to heat exposure. However, pixel structure analysis showed grip indentation on camera consistent with physiological tremor. Motion experts inferred high fear or exhaustion during final exposures. The camera was held by someone experiencing extreme stress, Williams testified during case review. The shutter pattern shows erratic timing, consistent with flight response. This clinical assessment translated to disturbing reality. Turner had photographed a human threat before his disappearance. The revelation transformed investigative focus toward potential criminality. Wyoming State Criminal Investigation Division joined the case. Agent Carlos Mendez specialized in wilderness crime scenes, a rare expertise combining traditional forensics with environmental analysis. No post-mortem human traces near recovery, ground samples sterile, recommend extended area excavation. His preliminary field assessment cited geothermal activity as both evidence preservative and destroyer. Certain biological markers would survive while others deteriorated completely. Dr. Turner viewed the photographs under controlled conditions on September 28th. Her statement afterward, recorded in official transcript, "The boot print doesn't match his equipment. Someone else was there." The photographs introduced timeline complications. Camera metadata, partially preserved despite damage, indicated the final 3 frames were taken June 13th, 2015. 1 day after Turner's disappearance, but 5 days before the GPS signal activation. This chronological disconnect suggested extended survival, contrary to initial search assumptions. Turner had remained alive, mobile, and cognizant enough to operate equipment for at least 6 days after vanishing. Excavation authorization signed October 2nd, 2020. Reopening closed case file YNP 15-26. Funding allocated under Special Operations budget through Department of Interior. Yellow police tape cordoned off the recovery area. Bright synthetic intrusion against ancient volcanic substrate. Ground-penetrating radar equipment arrived via helicopter. Technicians established baseline Earth density readings. One piece of evidence required no technological interpretation. Near the Pelican Case recovery point, a small stack of rocks formed an unmistakable arrow shape, pointing southeast toward a narrow fissure in the basalt shelf. The photograph replaces confession when the dead cannot speak. Exposure time as equivalent of testimony. 2 meters beneath that crust lay something preserved. Excavation began October 4th, 2020, under joint supervision of Park Service and FBI field unit out of Helena. Subsurface anomaly, hollow cavity, detected by ground-penetrating radar. Entry gained via controlled borehole and camera probe. Inside, collapsed lava bubble approximately 6 meters wide, dry interior despite surface flux. Within lay remains of 2 individuals, Turner and unknown female subject later identified through dental record as Mara King. A seasonal worker declared missing August 5th, 2014 across Park District line. Physical evidence suggests extended occupation of subsurface cavity, nutritional deprivation, primary determining factor in time of death. This clinical assessment by medical examiner Dr. Julian Whitaker reduced human tragedy to physiological process, yet the scientific precision revealed important truths. Both individuals had survived multiple days within the chamber. Food wrappers indicated rationed consumption. A makeshift water collection system had condensed steam from thermal vents. Forensic sequencing revealed both died within same 72-hour period. Cause of death: combined hypothermia and dehydration. No external trauma consistent with assault, but arrangement of objects suggested confinement. Exit tunnel above had sealed naturally through corrosion collapse. Probable scenario: voluntary sheltering in void, unintended entrapment. Secondary evidence implies pre-existing habitation by human subjects. Traces of fabric bedding, improvised lantern system, multiple handwriting fragments on wall. Non-Eli origin. Investigators documented 47 distinct items within the chamber, ranging from basic survival gear to inexplicable artifacts. A collection of polished obsidian fragments arranged in geometric pattern. Topographic maps with unmarked tunnel systems hand-drawn in margins. Most disturbing, a journal fragment dated April 2014, Mara King's handwriting, described others moving through hidden passages and lights below the normal trails. The document suggested she had discovered the thermal cavity network months before her disappearance. Park Historical Archives confirmed King's employment, interpretive ranger assigned to Mammoth Hot Springs District. Her missing person report noted she had been researching historical documentation of the park's thermal features for an educational program. Handwriting analysis connected partial phrases to prior unsolved disappearance pattern along park perimeter 1990 to 2015. Phrases referencing circle, stay until quiet, don't go where light breaks. Photographs recovered from the chamber walls showed cave formations not documented in official park geological surveys. One image, partially deteriorated from moisture, depicted what appeared to be manufactured metal structures embedded in volcanic rock. FBI evidence response team documented the scene over 7 continuous days. Temperature readings inside the chamber averaged 54 degrees, insufficient for body preservation but adequate to maintain certain material evidence. We're dealing with what appears to be a naturally occurring structure that someone deliberately expanded, Agent Mendez stated during interagency briefing. The tunnel system shows both volcanic origin and human modification. This assessment raised disturbing questions about prior knowledge of the subsurface network. Park infrastructure maps dating to 1978 showed no corresponding tunnel systems. Despite comprehensive survey work that year, the mountain guarded the truth not in violence but in repetition, how one silence inherits another. For investigators, the discovery shifted terminology, no longer missing persons, now containment site. From November 2020 through June 2021, Interagency Task Force reviewed historical disappearances inside geothermal corridors of Yellowstone, 37 recorded cases within a 40-year range, sharing origin near vent structures. Most attributed to falls, scalding, or exposure. Turner and King's recovered evidence introduced new variable, recurrent human trace within off-limit zones marked in internal maintenance maps long before open access trails. Undisclosed operational conduits built during early geothermal surveys remain unmapped to civilian grids. This internal memo, authored by Task Force Director Special Agent Leslie Hammond, formalized a troubling reality. Sections of Yellowstone's subsurface infrastructure existed outside public documentation. These sealed tunnels, originally vent inspection routes, occasionally reopened through micro-collapses, appearing as natural caverns. Unindexed architecture becomes accidental prison. Department of Interior archives revealed a classified 1966 geological survey, Operation Caldera, that mapped extensive subsurface features for scientific monitoring. Many access points were deliberately sealed after research concluded their existence purged from public maps due to safety concerns. Agent Laura Denning summarized in court testimony. The park itself is archive and cage combined. Her testimony supported a civil lawsuit filed by the Turner and King families against the National Park Service, alleging negligence in maintaining accurate documentation of potential hazard zones. 6 additional missing persons cases underwent reopened investigation based on proximity to known tunnel access points. Ground-penetrating radar surveys identified 22 subsurface chambers within search viability range. The Turner-King chamber underwent detailed forensic processing. Carbon dating of fabric remnants, food packaging, and modified equipment revealed a disturbing timeline, evidence of intermittent human presence dating back to 1992. Multiple individuals appear to have utilized this space over a 28-year period, Dr. Whitaker noted in supplemental findings. Some materials show deliberate positioning inconsistent with accidental entrapment. This assessment raised questions of intent. Had some individuals deliberately used the chambers? Geological analysis confirmed natural sealing events could trap unwary explorers, but certain evidence suggested knowledge of alternative exits. In April 2021, park management implemented comprehensive tunnel mapping initiative Project Transparency, combining historical documentation with modern scanning technology. The press release described it as addressing legacy documentation inconsistencies. The reality proved more complex. 17 subsurface chambers showed evidence of human modification, expanded passages, crude tool marks, improvised ventilation systems. None appeared in official park documentation prior to 2020. Families of prior missing hiked the area for memorial service August 12, 2021. Among them, Dr. Rachel Turner stood near New Marker at South Rim, facing canyon dawn that mirrored her brother's final photograph. Sequence. I don't blame the park for the tunnels, she told assembled mourners. I blame the silence about their existence. Her statement encapsulated the core finding of the interagency review. Institutional knowledge had failed to transfer between generations of park management. Safety hazards identified decades earlier had been administratively erased rather than monitored. The case redefined search protocol for thermal areas nationwide. New guidelines required historical infrastructure verification before declaring any missing person case closed. Bureaucracy writes closure, but the landscape refuses editing. It reuses evidence. One forensic note remained unresolved. Wall graphite extraction showed compound used not since 1968 survey season. Years after, audio anomalies persisted. Seasonal rangers reported intermittent signal reflection near Old Point Kappa. When cross-checked with topographic sensors, echoes patterned Morse intervals, short, long, short, pause, matching repetition found scratched into recovered pelican case, 3 dots, dash, 3 dots. Yet this correspondence stayed under internal classification, officially logged as natural interference phenomenon. By 2023, the Turner-King case had catalyzed significant policy revision. National Park Service Director Memorandum, NPS 2341, established mandatory subsurface mapping requirements for all parks with geothermal features. The document explicitly referenced historical documentation failures at Yellowstone as justification. Environmentalist groups opposed extensive scanning, citing wildlife disruption. Their resistance generated unexpected support from a contingent within the Park Service itself. Career rangers who expressed concern about overstating isolated incidents. This institutional friction revealed persistent cultural divides regarding wilderness management philosophy, whether parks should prioritize visitor safety through comprehensive disclosure or preserve natural mystery through minimal intervention. Dr. Hart returned for follow-up evaluation of surviving team members. Her final observation read, "Post-incident survivors share identical dream schema, bright hallway, merging into canyon rims, no sound except camera shutter click." Agency ethics report recommended periodic mental health debriefing protocols for personnel engaged in unresolved wilderness fatalities. By 2024, the Turner case became documentary reference in SAR training. How search accuracy fails when geography itself conceals architecture. Congress approved the Wilderness Safety Transparency Act in January 2025, requiring all federal land management agencies to maintain comprehensive subsurface feature databases accessible to search and rescue operations. Truth in open terrain appears clean. Beneath, it multiplies into strata of partial rooms, partial lives. In Revision Edition's case file YNP 15-26 carries marginal note, recovered, incomplete. In early spring 2025, snowmelt exposes the galvanized trail register at Canyon Village for maintenance replacement. Inside the weather-worn box, rangers find the first page still intact. Thin yellow sheet marked by fading signatures. At midpoint, one name, Eli Turner, nearly washed away. Beneath, a later hand has penciled small symbols, 3 dots, a dash, 3 dots. No verification possible of when the edition appeared. Wind moves through the pine. Paper lifts once, then settles. Dr. Rachel Turner, now director of a wilderness safety advocacy organization, publishes final analysis of her brother's case. The document acknowledges institutional improvements, while questioning persistent classification of certain audio anomalies. Park Service internal monitoring continues at Point Kappa, and 16 additional subsurface access locations. Seasonal staff receive expanded safety briefings that include historical infrastructure awareness. Statistical reassessment of Yellowstone missing person cases between 1968 and 2020 shows 86% resolved, 14% open. A significant improvement from previous 52% resolution rate following implementation of comprehensive mapping. Turner and King's recovered possessions remain partially classified, certain journal entries and photographs restricted under ongoing investigation protocols. The official rationale cites potential connection to additional cases, a bureaucratic phrase masking continued uncertainty. Their story transforms into cautionary training material, how wilderness conceals not just natural hazard but human history, how documentation failure compounds across decades. Camera pans back toward the overlook, bright light on wet stone, footsteps receding toward nothing audible. File concludes at 1000 hours local time. No closing statement issued.